Hello, Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode of the Weekly Crusaders. My name is Sean Wascrook. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. And today we're talking about two movies that came out during the week of May 28th through June 3rd. Definitely two unique kind of films. We're still staying in the early 90s, late 80s. My pick is definitely a film that Brian wanted to be on Cinemasochism, but I told him if he did, I would be defending it the entire time, but that was also before I rewatched it. And then Brian's film is a comedy with a phenomenal cast that I had never seen before, so it'd be a first-time watch for me. What are your thoughts on the two films before we jump in?
I think they're very similar. It's very odd how we both picked movies that were almost identical in nature.
They're night and
you couldn't get farther apart of these two movies or the audiences they were going for. Yet somehow I was kind of the audience for both of them at the time. It's kind of weird, but I think that they're both movies that most people haven't seen, and one of them's worth watching.
Well, I think they're both worth watching, but but on different.
I will agree with that. Yes.
We're gonna start with mine first. For anyone who doesn't know, who's watched this channel, I was a professional wrestler for 14 years, and I grew up during the age of Hulkamania. I was a Hulkamaniac because all kids my age back then were brainwashed into believing that Hulk Hogan was the greatest wrestler alive until they grew up and realized that Macho Man Randy Savage was actually the best wrestler and not Hulk Hogan. But when this movie came out, this was at the height of Hulkamania. This was a byproduct of WWE. We are talking about the first ever film starring the Hulkamaniac himself, Hulk Hogan, 1989's No Holds Barred. No Holds Barred came out June 2nd, 1989. It had a budget of $8 million, had a weekend opening of $4.96 million. It was number 2 its opening weekend, its highest ranking, and had a finished box office of $16.09 million. It did not go international, so that was just the overall domestic for right there. This is a movie that...
It's a movie.
And like I said, Brian wanted this to be on Cinemasochism, and I kind of basically stood up for it and said no. Like, I have fond memories of this film as a kid, which I still do. And I will say this, and I got a lot to say about it, more so that I'm probably going to talk more than Brian, because Brian's got a pretty strict mind on it that he does not like this movie.
Well, let me hear. Let me get a few of my thoughts out of the way early. Because when this movie came out, this is back when I actually was like really into wrestling. Kind of in that kind of Hulk Hogan, Randy Macho Man era. But before they, this is before, the WCW kind of took over and stuff. This is back when they were WWF. That's when I was really watching this stuff. And like you said, he was the biggest, wrestler on the planet and all this stuff. He's a big star. And at the time, I mean, wrestlers had appeared in movies. I mean, he had been in Rocky 3. He had been in Rocky 3. Andre the Giant had been in, Princess Bride, things like that. And the only real starring role I know of was Roddy Piper being in They Live. But in this one, it's like Hulk Hogan, like they wanted to put him in a movie, but it's like, I think they knew that he didn't really have the ability to be somebody different. It's like, let's put him in essentially playing himself in this movie. Granted, like a lot of movies, like a little bit maybe heightened version of himself, but he was essentially playing Hulk Hogan under a different name. So there was that. And thing is, this is a movie that, like you said, I think is worth watching. Maybe not for the reasons they wanted you to watch it, because like I said in my Letterboxd review last time I watched it, the movie itself is a half-star movie. But I gave it an extra half-star just because it's one of those movies that, honestly, it's so bad, it's just fun to watch. It's like, I mean, but it's not, I don't think it's doing it intentionally. It's not one of those movies that's playing it with a wink and trying to be fun. I think it's just a badly made movie, but I will admit there is some entertainment value to be had watching this movie, just not for the reasons they wanted.
This is the product definition of a guilty pleasure film. It is a movie that is really, really bad.
Now, let me ask you real quick before you just get into it. When's the last time you watched this movie?
Besides for the show this week?
Yes.
It's probably been about 5-10 years.
Okay. And did your
Um,
opinion change, you think, this time?
I think I always knew that the movie wasn't necessarily good,
Mm-hmm.
but the wrestling lover in me and stuff has a very special place in my
Right.
heart for this film. I do think watching it this time around, I was watching it with more of a critical eye because I knew you didn't like it. So I was trying to find ways that I could defend this
You
film.
prepared your defense, yeah. Okay.
Yes, I was. And outside of just it's so blatantly like The Room, it's so blatantly bad that it's actually fun to watch and laugh at, that even though it's not in on the joke, you can watch it and almost go, do they know that this is bad? Like, because like I think that they secretly know that this is bad and they're in on the joke, but they're not. And that's the fucking funny thing about this whole thing, is that they are trying to make this serious. But there's so many lines of dialogue. I mean, the iconic "What's that smell?" Yuki. I mean, that how can you take a movie seriously? But it's Kurt Fuller, who plays basically the villain in this film. He is cheesing it up as Brill so bad that it's his
With him
dialogue.
around this time, like just 2 years later, he was in Wayne's World. He was playing all these kind of roles in every movie he was in.
His dialogue is so mustache twirling bad. I mean, there's literally a part in the movie where he has like a female studio exec, and she's trying to pitch something and he doesn't like it, and instead of saying "you're fired," he's like, "Take a leak." And she just starts crying and leaves the board. I was like, does that mean she's fired? I don't know. Like the dialogue's cringy as hell. And you want to know why the dialogue's cringy as hell? It's because the movie was basically written by Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon. Even though the writing,
I heard that.
It is written technically by Dennis Hacken, but it is actually written by Hogan and Vince McMahon, and you can tell by the dialogue. There's like you're watching like, oh, Vince totally had a hand in the writing for this. And this is the thing that frustrates me about this movie. And this is where I'm going to take completely over from Brian and just go into my whole spiel about this. As a guilty pleasure movie, I love this in a way. It's not a fantastic film. Like Brian said, it's a half-star movie. He gives it another star for just pure schlocky enjoyment. It's 2.5 stars for me. And the reason why is, even though Hulk Hogan is kind of not a positive mindset in my career, because I did meet him at one point. He was a grade A douchebag to me when I did meet him. But through my childhood, Hogan was a very important aspect of my life. And I watched all of Hogan's movies. I watched Suburban Commando, Mr. Nanny, and this when it came out. So this movie has a special place for my heart. Watching it today, this movie was specifically made to literally just elevate Hulk Hogan's character to a more mainstream audience. What frustrates me, though, about it is because they use World Wrestling Federation in this. They call him the World Wrestling Federation champion. He literally has the World Wrestling Federation belt in this movie. But because this movie is an R-ish rated kind of film with the dialogue and how it is kind of more of a darker film with the violence and stuff like that, they didn't want to use the Hulk Hogan name. They didn't want to use the Hulk Hogan moves. They didn't want to use his colors palette for his outfit. They didn't want to use his catchphrase sayings. So they created this Rip character, and they made him white and blue instead of red and yellow. And they didn't want to use the iconic leg drop. They did this double axe handle move. He said "rip him" instead of "what you gonna do, brother." Like they did everything they could to not make him Hulk Hogan, but he was still Hulk.
He was still Hulk Hogan. Yeah,
he's Hulk Hogan. So it's one of those like, you have Jesse the Body Ventura and Mean Gene Okerlund there. You have a WWF ring. You have a WWF championship belt. Just let it be Hulk Hogan at this point. And you have at one point where he's kind of like hitting on the girl, and he's kind of using dialogue that he shouldn't use around a lady, but it's Hulk Hogan. He's eat your prayers, say your vitamins, say your prayers. And here he is like trying to like kind of get with this woman. But so it's like Vince wants his cake, it wants to eat it too, but he doesn't want to like share. But it's like, dude, you can't make everything Hulk Hogan, but then just change the name and have it not be Hulk Hogan. So that's frustrating on its own end. the other part about this too is that they basically took an actor in Tiny Lister Jr. who has zero pro wrestling training. Dude was not a pro wrestler. But because of that, they actually forced Tiny into becoming a pro wrestler and actually started wrestling for WWE for a short period of time. So that way the storyline of this movie blended into the real world as the Zeus character and actually fought Hulk Hogan and Macho Man. He teamed up with the $1 Million Man. And blended was, once again, why not just fucking make Hulk Hogan in this movie then? And also, this whole movie was just another cheap ploy into making a no-holds-barred pay-per-view event. There was an actual no-holds-barred pay-per-view show where the main event was Brutus Bar Beefcake and Hulk Hogan. I think it was against Zeus and $1 Million Man. So all of this was just made to try and elevate Hogan to a more mainstream audience by making it a movie, because people don't want to watch WWE because it's wrestling and carny and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, if we make it a movie, maybe we'll bring more people into it and then bleed that character of Zeus into the real world to add more of a realism effect to it. And that's where this whole film really is. It's kind of a trying to think of it as like it's manipulative to a point, because they're trying to trick people into watching WWE.
It's just promotional, and I think the
It
timing of it. I think the timing of it was especially funny because, like I said, in 1987 and 1988, you have Princess Bride and you have They Live, which are kind of the biggest successful movies as far that had a major role with a wrestler in it. And I think that they thought, well, hey, if our wrestlers are going to be start doing movies, well, let's just use it to actually help promote WWF itself. Let's not just put them in movies. Let's make it so we not only are we supporting movies, but the movie is supporting us. And so it became essentially a 2-hour commercial.
And it also in a way, even though this is years down the road, the main story plot is that Rip has a word as his bond contract with WWE or WWF at the time. And Kurt Fuller's character, Brill, who is World Television Network, World Championship Wrestling, everybody, WCW, World Television Network, wants Rip because he brings in the big bucks. He brings in the ratings. And he really brings Rip into his office and says, here's a blank check. Put whatever amount you want on it and come work for me. AKA exactly what Ted Turner did to sign wrestlers to WCW. And Rip's word's my bond. I'm not doing that. And so basically it's kind of just saying like, Hogan's my guy. He would never leave me, because his word's his bond, because he's Hulk Hogan. Fast forward literally 4 years later, Hogan jumped ship to WCW. But it's one of those things where it's like everything about this is so in the mindset of Vince McMahon and Hogan that you just kind of have to, especially now, like you just kind of laugh at it because of where everything kind of went down the road. Not that Hogan didn't jump back and forth between WCW and WWF multiple times throughout his career after that. But going into the actual film itself, Hulk Hogan is hilariously bad in this, whereas Roddy Piper is so good. We praised him on Cinemasochism when we did Hell Comes to Frogtown. And that movie did not become a Cinemasochism movie. And then be like, we actually enjoyed the shit out of this. And Roddy Piper's great. Hogan is not good in this movie, but Hogan is hilariously bad. I love that every time he does.
Like he's basically his acting and stuff. The movie basically feels like when they do the little backstage bits and stuff when you watch like a WWF at the time, which works fine as the interstitial between matches, things like that. You try and make it the whole movie is that, it's like, ooh.
Well, but he's playing this character of Rip, which is supposed to be a real life character, because at this time they're still selling off the realism that pro wrestling is real and that it's not fake. So in the movie, when Hogan or Rip fights, it's a real fight. It's very UFC in a way. And when you're actually watching, this is kind of just showing the UFC in its own way, because the final battle is in an octagon. It's got ropes instead of a cage, but it is an octagon. And so it's like, wow, they're actually kind of doing UFC before UFC actually started. So there is something actually like kind of like, oh wow, this is almost like kind of like predicting shit in a way. It was really weird watching. It was like, wow, they called some shit out way before shit actually did happen. You know, and they're taking some effects from the Rocky franchise and stuff like that. But they are at the end of the day, they're literally trying to make it feel like wrestling's still real at this point because it's the 80s. None of the fake stuff really came to full disclosure till the internet came out like in '96, and then you
It's kind of thing where everybody knew, it was kind of unspoken though. Still,
exactly. I mean, you still had so many people still hardcore believe it's real to me, damn it, kind of thing. And I love that the final fight at the end effectively Rip kills Zeus, because like if that really happened, that's a travesty. Like, I'm sorry, like that's not a good thing. And the crowd's all cheering, like, yeah, you killed him. It's like, no. And then like Buell dies from electrocution. The crowd still cheers. Like, you just saw 2 murders, people. You wouldn't be cheering this. You would be like horrified about what just happened. But Hogan's out there going, and like doing the whole big like let's celebrate at the very, very end. It's like it's such schlocky hilariousness, and like it's horribly acted throughout. But and it's got, honestly, like at the time he was a nothing actor, but one of my favorite character actors out there, Mark Pellegrino, which many people know him from Lost, Supernatural.
I didn't know if he was in this. I thought this was too early for him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a younger brother in this, and he's not a good actor at this point. He's just like young and just not good. But it's hilarious watching him that young be in this movie. Also, another wrestler's in this movie, Stan Hansen. He plays the. He honestly looks. I can't remember what the actor's name is, but anyone who watched Boy Meets World, he looks a lot like Sean Hunter's dad. He also is in The Water Boy. He's the Louisiana guy who's like, yeah, like that guy. I can't remember what the actor's name is. Stan Hansen kind of looks like him, but like could really fuck you up, kind of thing. But he's got like a few scenes in the movie, but it's one of those things where it's schlockily bad movie, but it is fucking funny. It is fun, and it's under 90 minutes as well. So it's one of those things, if you can, much like how Cinemasochism was kind of supposed to be with us, but we end up just getting movies that just really, really are bad. You want to watch bad movies that can be fun. This is a bad movie, but it's also fun. If you can kind of just relax and watch how bad Hogan acts in this film, and how when he's not trying to be, what you gonna do, brother? And just kind of like actually like deliver just like straight talk dialogue and try to talk sophisticated in certain moments and try to like have a romance going with the lead actress. There's zero chemistry there. And that actress is trying her heart out to make you buy into this shit. And even the 2 Stooges, let me find them here. Charles Levin, who plays Ordway, and David Paymer, who plays Unger.
David Paymer, like a real actor.
Which honestly, Charles Levin, he's literally doing his best. Richard Wool, who played Arliss and he was in Batman?
Robert Wool.
He's trying to do his best Robert Wool impression throughout this whole film, because that character was made for Robert Wool, but they probably just couldn't get Robert Wool because he was probably like, I'm better than this. Because he was doing Batman the same year.
Yeah, this is the same year as Batman.
Yeah, so it's like you weren't gonna get Robert Wool, but this guy's literally doing Robert Wool throughout this whole film. And they're, like I said, they're stooges, but they're good stooges in the movie. I mean, they're written horribly, but for what Kurt Fuller's doing, it works. It works for it. And the action, I mean, it's pro wrestling action. I mean, there's stiffness in terms of the fighting, but if it works. And honestly, the wrestling part of the actual fight, like the final battle against Zeus, that was actually shot really fucking well. Why? Because it was like a real wrestling match to a point. That part works. Now, when Rip's going around beating up thugs out in the real world, that shit just looks fucking funny and stupid. I mean, there's literally one part where he throws a guy through like a limousine, like sunroof, and the guy's like stiff, like his body's frozen. It's like, no, dude, you just would have probably fallen through like the hole into the, like, you wouldn't have like been like legs sticking out like this and shit. But it's funny. And if you could just let yourself
well,
go,
even like the scene when like he first like leaps up out of the thing,
He shoots out of it like Kool-Aid Man.
It's a shot. You probably didn't watch this because you're way too young. That's a shot straight out of the old Incredible Hulk TV show with Lou Ferrigno. He would do that all the time. He would come bursting around.
Well, and he's also doing this thing because he gets locked in the limo and the guy's driving around. I guess they're trying to take him to like a location to like do something to him, and he's kicking the car door, and it's and the force of his kick is so powerful that it's causing the guy to veer all across the street. It's like, okay, someone can't kick the car door from the inside of a limousine and cause the guy to lose control. And then like they do a shot outside the limousine and like you can see it being dented outward because he's kicking so hard. And it's like, first off, Hogan, your knees and your quads would be in so much fucking pain kicking the car door like that. But then he has the strength to basically leap like 10 feet in the air. Hogan can't jump higher than like 4 feet. Hogan can't jump higher than 2 feet. Let's be real here. He can jump. His leg drop is a 2-foot jump and then him lifting his legs out. It just looks high because Hogan's fucking tall. He has no ups. He really doesn't. So to him, for his character to then jump 10 feet through a limousine roof and then continue to go up and then land perfectly fine, you got to let the movie just go with what it's doing. But No Holds Barred, it's a bad movie. It's a horribly written film. It's horribly acted, but it's still a guilty pleasure funny film. It really, really is. And if you like pro wrestling, or if you've ever been a fan of Hulk Hogan or anything like that, watch this film because it's fucking funny and it's short. But don't expect this to be like a top tier film. This is a C movie level film at best. But knowing that Vince was basically trying to manipulate people and trying to watch WWE and trying to blend this in, and then they even tried to sell a pay-per-view out of it, which I can't even remember if I got that or not as a kid. I kind of want to say no, but part of me also goes, I probably totally did. And I can't remember for the life of me. But yeah, that's No Holds Barred in a nutshell. Like I said, I knew a lot more about the movie than Brian did. And Brian's usually the guy who knows the excess crap. But I knew in this one, I was like, this is my movie. It's a wrestling movie. I need to do my homework. So I knew Brian was going to take the back.
Because everything I looked up, like about like having Zeus like actually wrestle something, like Sean already knows all this stuff. Let him cover it.
Tiny Lister cannot move that well. Even if you watch like Friday and everything else, he's not a fast moving guy.
Oh no, he's just a big
guy. Oh god, watching him actually in an actual WWF ring was painful. It was painful. Which honestly, in my opinion, is what hurt The Undertaker when he first came in, because Undertaker moved just as slow, but that's because his character was slow. And Undertaker was agile as shit. Like, he could do some things that guys his size couldn't do, but because we had just gotten through with Zeus, or Tiny Lister as Zeus, when Undertaker first came in, you're like, oh, here comes another just lumbering, slow motherfucker. And you're like, oh, no.
Too bad he had that little baby voice, too. That was weird.
If Suburban Commando ever comes up on this show,
you just showed me this clip of it, yeah.
Yeah, you're a damn man, Ramsey. No wonder you guys couldn't talk. But I actually think Suburban Commando is probably Hogan's best film, bar none. I actually enjoy.
Wow, that's a low bar.
Dude, Christopher Lloyd is great in that movie. But anyway, we're gonna move on to Brian's pick now. This is a film I had never seen, but the cast alone was like, how have I never seen this movie? And that is the 1991 soap opera comedy Soap Dish. Soap Dish came out May 31st, 1991, had a budget of $25 million, had a weekend opening of $6.74 million. It was number 2 its opening weekend. That was its highest ranking, and had a finished box office of $36.49 million. It did not go international, so that was the only domestic total that it had. Yeah, Brian, take this one away. I've done enough talking.
Yeah, no, I miss these days of like the 80s and 90s and the comedies, because this is the kind of movie this would never get released to theaters nowadays. These kind of mid-budget, like you said, it was at a budget like $25 million, only made like 36, but was considered a success because that's all they tried to make on these things. The reason you didn't see it, and the reason a lot of people didn't see it, is because it is a soap opera comedy. If you're like, I don't like soap operas. Who cares about soap operas? I don't want to see this movie. I didn't care about soap operas, but I went because of the cast. I was in love with Elizabeth Shue. She's just coming off of stuff like the Back to the Future movies and Cocktail and some of that stuff. Kevin Kline.
And Adventures in Babysitting.
Yeah, about 5 years earlier. Kevin Kline had just a couple years earlier won the Oscar Best Supporting Actor for Fish Called Wanda, and he was one of my favorite comedic actors at the time. Robert Downey Jr., who has the very definition of a roller coaster career. This is kind of during one of the lulls of his career, this is kind of one of the movies that kind of brought him back to the forefront. And this, and Heart and Souls, and a couple other really good comedies I liked, kind of brought him back. Whoopi Goldberg, again, just coming off of winning an Oscar for Ghost the year before. So it just had this great cast across the board, and I was like, I'm going to check this out. And this was a lot of fun. I kind of feel like this is like not quite the same thing as Oscar in terms of its tone, but it definitely kind of has that same kind of farcical feel to it, where there's a lot of like, misunderstandings and who knows what and who's kind of double crossing who and that kind of thing in this movie. And it feels like, I mean, not as much as Oscar because it's not one location thing really, but this could also kind of be a play. It's very dialogue driven. It's that kind of comedy. There are a couple physical gags, but it's not really that kind of thing. It's just about the characters and it's about the comedy. And first and foremost, it is that cast, because besides the one I already mentioned, you got Sally Field is kind of in the lead. You got Kathy Moriarty. You got Terry Hatcher in one of her earliest roles. There's Kathy and Jamie, a bunch of other people you recognize in there.
Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, what's that?
Carrie Fisher.
Carrie Fisher. I forgot she was in that. I didn't go far enough down the list to look at that. But yeah, this is a movie that I mean, I think that a lot of people didn't check out just because, like I said, it's about a soap opera. But I mean, it's a lot of fun. It kind of keeps you guessing towards the end. There are things you kind of see coming and things you don't see coming. It's just the kind of comedy they don't make anymore nowadays. Even we talk about a lot of times about, oh, this kind of would go straight to streaming now. I don't even think they'd make this movie for streaming now, because you don't see these big star-driven ensemble comedies anymore.
This would have been a streaming show.
Now. I could see this being a streaming show, like a limited run kind of thing.
Yeah, this would have been like a 10-episode, like limited short series because of it being a soap opera thing. This definitely would have been like a 10-episode series.
But I feel like it would end up being more like a parody of soap operas if they tried to do that now. And that's not even what this is. This takes place behind the scenes at a soap opera, but it really, I mean, a couple times when they show them filming scenes, you do see kind of the cheesy overacting, things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's not even really, this movie isn't really spoofing soap operas. It's one of those kind of behind the scenes kind of things. It's the interaction of the actors, and it's the egos, and it's the, who hates who and who's trying to, like, sabotage the other person to get their part and that kind of thing. And then you have like Whoopi Goldberg is the head writer, and she's the best friend of Sally Field's character. So she's kind of trying to support her, whereas the other writers are trying to, like, ruin her career, things like this. And it's just one of those things. It's a lot of fun. I especially think Kevin Kline, like I said, he was in the prime of his comedic career, and it really makes me sad that not only is he largely not act much anymore. I mean, he pops up occasionally in something here and there, but he hasn't done really these kind of comedies in such a long time. And this is the era we had Fish Called Wanda, where we had Dave, even just 2 years after this one. And it's kind of like Kevin Kline was one of my favorite comedic actors, and he's had great presence and timing to him. And so he was a lot of fun in this. And I think that he played very well against Sally Field. He played I love the dynamic with those two, and Elizabeth Shue, who, spoiler alert, they find out is their daughter. Well, Sally Field knows, but she's their daughter. And right after he was like trying to make the moves on her, like, the night before, things like that. But yeah, I babbled. Sean, first time viewing, what'd you think?
Honestly, like, looking at the cast, it's like, okay, this is a strong cast, but the selling point for me was Kevin Kline. We are huge Kevin Kline fans. I love Kevin Kline. I agree. He needs to come back, like, in a force and do some shit. Like, I would love to see him pop up in like a Knives Out movie, like something that
perfect for him. Yes,
perfect for him. I like, if we're making a dream cast, him with Benoit Blanc, oh god,
imagine him like an American detective, or I mean, like a Northern American detective, like investigating
like
along
almost
with
like
him.
a Pink Panther-esque kind of character. With dude, please do it. Come on, Ryan Johnson, do it, just do it. But that was my main selling point, because like 90s Kevin Kline was untouchable in terms of comedy. It didn't matter how shitty the movie was, Kevin Kline was gonna fucking knock it out of the park. And that was the one thing that's like, when I saw this, I was like, okay, Robert Downey Jr., I'm intrigued, but 90s Robert Downey Jr. was hit and miss, and Whoopi Goldberg, hit and miss. Sally Field, I'm not the hugest fan of, but Kevin Kline, okay, with all of them and Kevin Kline, this should be good. I don't give a shit about soap operas. Soap operas were the things that I got stuck having to watch after Price is Right ended when I was sick from school.
Yep, exactly.
And mom was at home, and I had to watch Days of Our Lives and Young and the Restless, and maybe General Hospital if I didn't find a way to like feel better and go play with my toys. You know, like that's what soap operas were to me. Is they were things that I had to watch in order to stay home from school on sick days. And for anyone who says that wasn't them when they were a kid, you're a fucking liar. And then, heaven forbid, you actually got hooked on them, and then you were just screwed. And then you just wanted, like, especially during the summer.
I have to admit, there's a couple times that happened to me. Yeah.
During the summer is when you get hooked on, and then you're just praying for school to start, so you didn't have to.
You know what I got hooked on is at the time when Meg Ryan was on As the World Turns. That's what I hooked on.
Yeah, so and most of the time it was Days of Our Lives that I got hooked on. So, there's one negative to this movie that I really just don't stand. And it's because I just don't like the actress. There are certain actresses and actors that it doesn't matter how good the movie is, if they are a main facet of the film, it immediately kind of makes me go, because I just can't stand them. And that's Catherine Moriarty. I can't stand her. I've never liked her in anything, even like Regine Bull and Casper and everything else that I've seen her in. Like I can't stand her voice. She's like just nails on a chalkboard grating to me, and she's always just screaming and yelling and stuff. And it's like, she immediately makes me go from an enjoyment factor to you're giving me a fucking headache. And
on the plus side, you're supposed to hate the character, though.
I get that, but it's just every time she's on screen, I just wanted her off. And what sucks is because like 90% of Robert Downey Jr.'s scenes, she's with him. So I couldn't even enjoy Robert Downey Jr. in this movie because every time he was on screen, I knew she was going to be right there with him. So it kind of it hurt Robert Downey's performance for me. Like, and he was good. He's good in the movie, but I couldn't enjoy him because I had to listen to her voice the whole different times. Like, oh God, I can't stand her. Sally Field is doing her best over the top acting in this because soap opera. Because the whole thing about this is that yes, they're filming a soap opera, but their real life is just as much of a soap opera as what they're filming. Yeah. And it's I wouldn't go on the level of Oscar. Like I feel like that's a slap in the face to Oscar.
No, I'm not saying it's as good. I just meant in terms of kind of having that farcical kind of tone to it.
Yeah, I do think that there are certain actors who didn't get utilized to their fullest potential. I think Terry Hatcher was just kind of there. I think Whoopi could have been nobody at the time. Well, yeah, she wasn't nobody. But I feel like Whoopi could have been used a little bit better in terms of this. But I like you said, Kevin Kline is great in this. His dynamic chemistry with Sally Field is great. I love the one scene where he kept kissing her, and then it's like, wait, I messed the line. Can I do it again? And then the third time she just knees him. I love that. I love the whole dynamic he had with her when she's trying to spy on him and Elizabeth Shue, and just like once and like she's on the
just
side
hanging from that, yeah,
and like that whole conversation they had in there where he's just fucking with her the whole time, like because that's what's so great about Kevin Kline. He could be this kind of egotistical jackass, but it's charming as hell, and he plays it beautifully in everything that he's in. I love Kevin Kline so much. But yeah, Sally Field, I feel like with Sally Field, when she overacts, it's hit or miss depending on who's in the scene with her. If she's with Kline and Shue and Whoopi, it works. When she's on her own, the acting just feels kind of blah to me. She's a very much of a you can even chalk that up to like with Mrs. Doubtfire. When she's working with Robin Williams, she's great. When she's not working with Robin Williams, it kind of doesn't work. Same thing goes with Smokey and the Bandit, which is with Burt Reynolds. She's an actress that is great with people around her, but when she's on her own, her performances to me don't quite hit. And I felt that way in this as well. Like that, like the one scene, like right when she gets home from the award and she finds out that her boyfriend left her. She's overacting really bad.
Tantrum and then flops on the bed.
Yeah, really bad acting there. And it's part of me is like, is she overacting because it's a soap opera movie? And I'm like, no, because at that point that's just supposed to be her real life. And it's like, ugh, that's just bad.
To some extent, I think though, because she's a soap opera actress, I think she's an over dramatic person. Like one of my favorite moments, well, not my favorite moments. One of the scenes I like in the movie is like when she she's feeling down or whatever, and so she decides what she needs to do is apparently she does on a regular basis is go to the mall, have Whoopi Goldberg like pretend to recognize her just so she can get all the attention and she gets all that love lavished on her so she can improve her mood.
I love that Kevin Kline throws that at her later, like he knows that's what she does.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, do you have plans for the mall later?" I was like, "Oh!" Even I was like, "Oh, he knows about that. That's a oh!" And it was like, "That's a dig," and I loved it. The movie itself is, yeah, it's kind of all over the place. It's very manic, especially near the end, where I feel like the end, until he gets the big swerve part at the end, like the whole like all three of them are coming in to shoot and they don't know which one's leaving the show. I was like, they would never do that.
Yeah, and they're all like reading badly. Although it was fun watching him try to read those glasses. He's like,
those glasses, he's butchering everything, and Sally feels like having to kind of walk him through it. But you do get the almost the Finkel and Einhorn aspect of the film at the very end, which I thought was like funny, but they didn't utilize it as hard as they could have. Like I felt like they could have hit that a little bit better. But I was like, because like part of me was like, because I remember the first scene with him and Robert or with Kathy and Robert Downey Jr. when they were like, why aren't we having sex right now? And then they go in there and I'm like, why are they laying like that? Like they're laying in a weird way. Because I was like, it was almost like as Robert Downey Jr. was like the girl, and then like later was like, that makes a lot more sense now. And then like I almost thought like at the very end when Robert Downey sees her and he calls her by her real name, I was like, so did Robert Downey Jr. figure out that he's gay at the end of the movie? Like I don't, because they don't hit it hard enough. Because then it jumps ahead to the awards. I was like, I don't know where that end point happened. Like I kind of feel like they didn't finish the character plot for both their characters at that point. Did they, or did I just miss it? Or
no, I don't know where it goes after that, but I think it's just dramatic because he even is kind of like all creeped out, because obviously.
But that's the thing is like he had this arc through the movie where he's like, I don't know why you're not my type. I don't like girls normally like you, but for some reason there's something about you that just makes me be infatuated with you. And then he finds out the big thing, and I'm like, so he's basically finding out that he's gay. And that's why he's attracted to her. So like,
I didn't read it that way, and they may have been hinting that, but they definitely did not like overtly come out and say that because obviously,
because they didn't finish it. So I was like, part of me was like, I kind of felt like they just left that character dangling with a story element there.
So I thought when he called her by his real name, that it was more just like a dig, like you're no, I'm not into you because you're this dude, basically.
So because it looked like they were coming close to each other, like they were going to embrace. But once again, it was 1991. But it was like I was like, oh, like his character's just got a full character arc there. But then they cut. And then like they're at an awards party, and it's like that was not brought up ever again after. I was like, no. I feel like it missed something there. But I mean, it was if Kevin Kline was not in this movie, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it. Kevin Kline definitely, and because even Elizabeth Shue, as gorgeous as she is, I feel like she's fine in the movie. I feel like they could have utilized her better. Her performance wasn't. I feel like when she's interacting with Sally Field and Kevin Kline, it works. When she interacts with kind of like Sally Field, when she's with Kline, it works great. When she's interacting with everyone else, though, Elizabeth Shue's performance isn't that good, in my opinion. And here's a question I've got. I know I'm going on a little bit of a rant here.
That's fine.
Does Carrie Fisher just not like working movies that aren't Star Wars? Because I feel like every movie I see her in, she's got like 2 scenes and that's it.
Well, Carrie Fisher, I think she's not like Star Wars movies. She never had a huge acting career outside that. Even during Star Wars, she'd pop up in Blues Brothers, and she popped up in Where Harry Met Sally and things like this. And it's like she's never had really big roles in a whole lot of other movies. And I know part of it's like she became a writer both in screenplays and novels, and she also did like punch up writing a lot of other scripts that she didn't have writing credits on, things like that. And I don't know if it's that people didn't want to cast her, or she just didn't want to do it. But I think she's the kind of person who would like, she would get hired for supporting roles. She's kind of like the good, oh, I'll be the best friend, or I'll be this other person at the office, here in Soap Dish, things like that. But they never like put her in a lot of starring roles besides
Well, because
Star
like I got excited when I saw her. I was like, oh, Carrie Fisher's in this. I didn't know she was in this.
Barely, yeah.
And she's in like 2 scenes. And there was some other movie we watched earlier in the year that she was in. I was like, oh, Carrie Fisher. And she was in like 1 scene. Or no, it was Loverboy. She's basically 1 scene in that movie. And it's like, now that I'm paying attention to this, that's Carrie Fisher in most films. Like, you see her, you're like, oh, hey. And that's the only scene she's in. It's like, does she not like being in movies? Because like outside of, I think Under the Rainbow is probably the only other film I've seen her in where she's like actively like in the movie. And everything else is just like 1 scene, maybe 2 scenes. And if she is in it later, it's like she's in the room, but she's not really in the scene kind of thing. And I was part of me just like, I was like, I'm going to bring this up to Brian. It's like, because I know you watched Carrie Fisher a lot more than I have. And it's just like that. I feel like this is like a normal thing. Like she's not.
Yeah, no. Glancing at her filmography, I mean, there's the Star Wars movies. There's, like I said, she plays like best friend roles and things like When Harry Met Sally.
Wasn't she the wife in The Burbs, or am I missing?
And Wife in the Burbs. But other than that, I mean, she doesn't really have any major roles in pretty much anything that I'm seeing. So I think she's just a matter of she didn't have to work. I mean, she had Star Wars money. She had, she made all her money off writing and things like that. I think she's just. Like I said, I don't know if they didn't cast her, or I don't know if it's that she didn't want to. But either way, she seemed to be doing just fine in her career.
It's getting to the point now that if I see her in a movie that I've never seen before, I'll be more shocked if I see her more than 2 times.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. It's weird. I shouldn't be thinking that way, but I was like, fuck, does Carrie Fisher actually like being in films, or she just show up for a quick paycheck and then get the fuck out? But yeah, overall, the movie's was fine. I mean, in terms of other Kevin Kline films, it's probably my least favorite, but that's nothing to do with Kevin Kline. That is more or less just like the soap opera aspect of it didn't work. Kathy Moriarty being a focal point of the film was immediately a negative for me because I just can't stand her. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. I didn't love it, but I mean, But yeah, when you're like, it's like Oscar, like, don't you dare.
No, not as good. And I'm so happy to hear you say that, by the way.
I was like, you're so happy to hear me just defend, like, don't you dare say it's like Oscar.
Because everyone should go watch Oscar right now. Yes. But no, this is a movie, and this isn't a movie I picked because I thought it was like an all-time classic comedy, anything like that. This is just in the early '90s, especially. This is what they were doing. They were doing mid-budget, ensemble comedies with lots of faces, but none of them are like the A-list superstars that it wasn't the Julia Roberts of the movies and things like this. It was just like they had a lot of like solid actors, comedic actors in there, and they pumped out these things. And this was one of the I missed from that era, and it has a lot of people I like in it, so it's worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, cast-wise alone, I mean, it's one of those things where I was surprised I had never seen it, but like that's one thing. And I think it was like right when the movie first started, or I think it was like right when they did the first soap opera scene. I was like, as great as this film, or as great as this cast is, bad writing can still ruin this film. And that was before I even really got into the meat of the film, because I was like, how have I not heard of this film? I was like, this cast alone, I should have heard of this movie. And I was like, oh, if the writing's bad, it might not be that good. And I was like, I was like, I guess I know why I didn't hear about this movie. But I mean, it's like, it's not bad. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I did. But like I said, Kevin Kline's great, and Sally Field, when she's with Kevin Kline, is awesome. And the rest of the cast is just kind of there and utilized. I wish Robert Downey Jr. got to do more. Like, I loved when Robert Downey Jr., when he wasn't with Kathy, how he was like manipulating like the other writers. Like when he's like, "Oh, Whoopi Goldberg, you need like Kathy, go distract Whoopi. Hey, this is what we're doing right now. Hey, Sally Field, this is what's going on. This is what we need you to do. I didn't want you to do it." But it was like, oh man, like I love this Robert Downey Jr. I love this, where it's like when he's with Kathy for most of the film, he's like this like cuck, like little bitch kind of thing. I was just like, it's like, all right, whatever. Can we fast forward through, because I just don't want to listen to her talk anymore, kind of thing. And then like halfway through the movie, I was like, I keep forgetting that Terry Hatcher's in this film. She's just there off in the corner. Like, she's just a pretty girl to look at in the background. And she's got maybe like 10 lines of dialogue in the film.
Because I think the only thing she'd done before this was playing Sylvester Stallone's sister in Tango and Cash. She hadn't yet done Adventures of Lois and Clark yet. So yeah, this is like very early in her career. So yeah.
Oh yeah, because like Adventures of Lois Clark was like what, 93, 94?
Something like that, yeah.
But anything you'd like to add?
No. I did forget to mention earlier, No Holds Barred is not available anywhere. It's not even on digital. I had to get it from my local library to watch it.
Yeah, I luckily obviously have the DVD for it.
Soap Dish is currently on Max.
Yes, which is where I watched it. Yes, Max, where a lot of people are not happy with the new transition to that, but it's fine for me. But anyway, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Weekly Crusaders. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe on the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, we can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Out right now, we have our non-spoiler review and spoiler discussion of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Also, a review for The Boogeyman. And then coming up later here, we'll be having our episode of Cinemasochism, where we'll be talking about a movie that I didn't know existed, and after watching it, still feels like this movie was like a fever dream that never really happened. And that's called The Miami Connection. So be on the lookout for that video when that pops on the channel, because that was definitely a unique filming experience watching that with Brian. Next week, in terms of movies that are coming out, we got Transformers Rise of the Beast. And then we also got Flash and Extraction 2 coming out the week after that. Next Weekly Crusaders, let me pull up what the movies are real quick so we can give you guys a clue. Or it's probably going to be one of those things where we didn't make our decision yet. Let's see. Oh yeah, we both have 2 picks right now we're trying to decide on. So we don't know what we're picking yet. We have narrowed down to 2 each. God, I can't decide between my 2. It's gonna
watch it anyway.
Yeah, watch it anyway. They're both gonna be good. Both movies are gonna be fun when we decide which ones they're gonna be. But anyway, we are the Movie Crusaders. My name's Sean Wascrew. That's Brian Michaels. Until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.